Hello, everybody. This is an audio test. How many people are watching right now? Oh no. Why are there so many people watching a countdown timer? 5:30, 5:29, 5:28, 5:27. Why? There's nothing to see here. Oh my gosh, the chat's going so fast I can't possibly read it. Hey, all you moderator type people, should we investigate in slow mode? I'm not recommending it. I'm saying have the conversation, have the thought, consider it, and then do it if you think it's right. I don't know. Who's ready for CitizenCon? If you're ready for CitizenCon, type John Crew in chat. Anybody who's ready for CitizenCon, type John Crew in chat. Oh, anybody that's spelling it wrong, you're not ready for CitizenCon. There's an E at the end of crew. If you're ready for CitizenCon, type John Crew with an E at the end of chat. That person wasn't even close. That's not how you spell John in any language. Was that a Y? Where did you get a Y? What was that weird soft drink called? Innabrew? Dandelion burdock? Dandelion and burdock. Iron brew. So there's iron brew and dandelion and burdock. They got weird drinks here. All right, that's it. Audio test good. Show starts in about 3 minutes and 40 seconds, everybody. Get ready, because you're not.
Tak zdravím všechny u vysílání CITIZENCONu. Jsem to vůbec správně? Asi jo. No tak budeme se dívat, co nám tento rok přines a co nám ukáže budoucnost.
What my favorite thing about the community is?
What am I gonna say?
It's gonna sound cliche, but
they believe as much as we do.
I love them because they continue to support us.
It's the only thing that's kept me going.
I've seen a lot of games and I've seen a lot of invested players, but
they're right there with us throughout the whole process.
It's unlike anything that I've ever worked on.
The thing I really like the most about the community is how welcoming they are.
To new players entering the verse for the first time.
New players come every day, and I find that
they're always happy to show people the ropes.
I found it very wholesome.
When I first did the CITIZENCON, where I got to fly the Carrack, everyone was so supportive, and the cheers I got when we were flying through that wormhole was unbelievable.
Their effort they put into, like, their creativity.
Such as building a simulator inside of an entire RV or...
The cinemas, I love watching them on my lunch break.
I enjoy watching the videos on the content.
There was one recently on Twitter where it was like the 100 players entering the atmosphere that just looks really grand.
I love all the memes.
Some of the incredible fan art and passionate drive that you see come out of them is fantastic.
How they come up with crazy ideas each and every day and surprise me.
I really like all the crazy shenanigans they get up to in the PU.
I can't cuss, can I?
The new and exciting ways they find to
break shit.
Just the random stuff that you do, it's not like the gameplay we intend.
People doing crazy stunts in their ships.
I'm from the character team. That's why I think it's cool when they show off all the ships, because that's really the only time I get to see them.
They create the community by themselves, and that's really, really cool.
My favorite thing about the community around events.
Going to Bar Citizen.
It's always fun to meet some of the backers.
They've all been lovely to me in person. Even if they're like really frustrated, you can tell it's just, they have so much love for it.
I really like when the community is very detail-oriented about our work.
To see how excited they are about our progress.
How much inspiration we get from them, from their ideas.
I love the genuine enthusiasm.
The quick turnaround on feedback. I love that.
And how they're always interested in what's coming up.
I especially appreciate the people who are able to keep track of dates.
They, call us out.
It really impacts our decision-making process for, what did we do right? What did we do wrong?
It is the most rewarding thing in the entire development process.
We're not making the game alone. We're making it with the community.
Still keep fighting us.
They really do make all this possible. I'm living the dream. We all are.
My favorite thing about the community, it'd be impossible for me to narrow it down to one. And if somebody said you had to, I'd probably just turn and walk away.
Hi, I'm Chris Roberts. Ever since I saw Star Wars as a wide-eyed 8-year-old, I dreamt of being a hotshot pilot saving the galaxy or a lovable rogue making my way across the cosmos. It inspired me to make Wing Commander and has influenced everything I've done since then. 10 years ago, after 20 years of making games, I was burned out, so I took a break. But I never stopped playing games nor loving them. And now, I'm ready to come back, and I'd like to show you something I've been working on. But I don't want to build any old game. I want to build a universe. I want to build a game I always wanted to build, but I didn't have the tools to do until now. One that you can fly off a carrier fighting a heroic war on the front lines, but also one that you can muster out and find your own fortune in the stars wherever your spaceship takes you. I want to be able to share this experience with my friends and fight against real opponents in space, not just AI. And I want this to be as good or better than any other game out there. And I want to actively push the boundaries of what you can do in a game. None of this would have been even possible 2 years ago. But with Moore's Law driving PC performance and cost and the gaming community embracing talented developers via crowdfunding, I believe it is possible today. I've never been accused of having a small vision. And so I thought it was best if I share my ambition with you visually. I'm pretty excited by how it's joined out. So why don't you come join me for a sneak peek? 10 years ago, I stepped out onto a stage at GDC Online in Austin, Texas, and revealed Star Citizen to the world. We broke all records in crowdfunding, helped kickstart a revival in space games, and embarked on a journey with all of you to build the most immersive virtual universe ever conceived. I did say that I'd never been accused of having a small vision all those years ago. Every year since then, we have celebrated our anniversary with what we dubbed CitizenCon, a celebration of all of you, our community, without which we would not be here. When I made the original pitch for Star Citizen, there were no employees, no studios, and just a proof of concept demo cobbled together in CryEngine by myself, the help of a few people in their spare time. You couldn't play Star Citizen as it was an idea, not a game. The first few years was more talk and not as much show, but we managed to release the Hangar module in 2013, Arena Commander in 2014, and the first steps into the persistent universe with Star Citizen Alpha 2.0 at the end of 2015. The real game changer was Star Citizen Alpha 3.0, which we released at the end of 2017, which allowed players to first step foot on fully realized and detailed moons instead of just traversing space. 2018 brought the first planet in Hurston, and from there we filled out the rest of the Stanton system from ArcCorp to Microtech and finally Crusader with its floating cloud city of RYZEN last year. Today, there are just over 4 million registered accounts, with 1.7 million of them having purchased the game. And while we still have lots of features and content to build before I'm ready to consider Star Citizen done, people are playing more than ever. This year, our average daily unique players is around 50,000, and we have peaked at 130,000 several times this year. Wow, this compares with just under 10,000 back in 2017 and 32,000 last year. But the most amazing stat is the average playtime of someone that logs in 2022 is 3 hours a day. Back in 2017, this was 48 minutes. 64 minutes in 2018, and then jumping to 2 hours in 2019. From there, we've been steadily increasing. In 2022 alone, people have spent 36 million hours in the verse so far. So this is a testimony to the hard work, the development, and our online teams have been doing to make Star Citizen, even in its alpha state, more performant and stable than it's ever been, and the increasing amount of features and content that are available making for viable daily gameplay, even in Star Citizen's alpha state. Cloud Imperium Games has grown just as much. Today we're at 835 staff worldwide, all dedicated to building the most immersive virtual science fiction universe ever. In the next few weeks, we'll be welcoming 500 staff to their brand new studio at Manchester Goods Yard in Enterprise City, where we are filming this show from. All of this is down to your patience and support. Building a game of the scale, detail, and scope of Star Citizen as it is conceived today that allows us to seamlessly go anywhere from inside to outside, from space to planet, with no loading screens, all with millimeter detail, with everything being explorable, persistent, interactable, with thousands of players online together at the visual quality of the biggest AAA games is perhaps the most ambitious goal that has ever been set off towards in gaming. I am both humbled and thankful of being in the position of chasing my dream to build a truly immersive universe. And it has only been possible by building it outside the traditional publisher system, with a direct relationship to our secret source, you, our community. The strength of the Star Citizen community is a real unwritten headline to our longevity and future. The connections and friends people have made along the way, the events organized inside the game and outside by the various orgs. This year, we've had 140 Bar Citizen events put on around the world, with some of the most recent being in China, South Korea, Singapore, Paris, and Florida. Chinese Bar Citizen had over 300 attendees and a 5-meter-long 3D printed model of the Retribution super battleship from Squadron 42 built by the local community. Hopefully, next year we can return to an in-person CitizenCon, and I and the rest of the team at CIG will have the chance to spend some time with you in person. But for now, let's get the show on the road. 10 years ago, the ship I arrived on was a single-seater. Where we're going in the future, we're going to need a bigger ship. I present to you the only constant. You may have thought it was green screen, but we need something a little bigger for where we're going to entertain you and tell you about the game in the future. Here's a dedication plaque. The only constant in game development is change. Constellation Phoenix, my favorite ship, prototyped by Roberts Space Industries, commissioned from London Shipyards, Earth, Sol 3, launched October 2952, Manchester Starport. Captain Jared Huckabee. Jared, that wasn't the deal. You weren't going to be the captain of the ship.
I sent an email.
Oh, that must have gone in my junk folder.
Take a seat.
Okay,
aboard.
it's not bad. It's quite a nice little setup here, isn't it?
We've been talking about this on and off since 2015.
I know. I had to do something to get you over to the UK.
Hey, you know, he knows what I like. So what do you have?
Well, let's do a science fiction drink. Can you do a Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster?
Pan-Galactic Gargle glass here. No, I can do this really dry martini that we had pre-prepared before shoot.
Wow.
Hey, it's our first show. We gotta start small.
Look at that.
Hey, we'll get better. So what do we just do?
Well, the past 10 years and the future, the next 10 years and beyond, and the community.
Oh, we did that as an aerial. Cheers.
And cheers.
We didn't even plan that. Oh, right.
Wow.
All right, so.
That is strong. Back curve.
That's why we didn't cover anything. So what do you think? Look at my jacket. Stegman Cordamon, Voyager. Nice.
It's a bit blingy. I mean, you do look like you're a Knight of the Roxbury.
Yeah. Knight of the Roxbury. Yeah.
No,
Twinsies.
I don't be a twinsy with you.
Twinsies?
No. Let me check the rest of the set out.
But it's tailored.
It looks good on you. I'm not saying it'd be the same for me. Oh, wow. Look at all these cool artifacts. You got this Hadician artifact. There's a bunch of stuff here. That's really cool. The CitizenCon trophy. Wow. That's brilliant.
Yeah, well, Dave had to hook me up. You're going to sit in my chair.
I am. It's a very nice chair. I like the desk. We've got a bubble head. This is a great place to interview people from. What's it like sitting over there?
I'm getting a newfound appreciation for how awkward it is on this side. So what do you think? We should start the show?
I think we should start the show.
All right, let's start the show. Our first presentation of the day is Planetary Pyro with our good friend Maximilian Kailish from our Frankfurt studio. He's going to take you on a tour of 6 of the neat locations coming in the upcoming Pyro system, the first of our Journey to 4.0 presentations of the day. So take it away, Max. I really want my chair back.
It's a very nice chair. We'll talk about it.
My name's Max. I'm here on behalf of the Planet Content team today. I'm a senior environment artist and I want to show you some of the cool stuff that we worked on in the last 2 years. So I have Pyro 1 open already. It's live in engine. This is like the current version of Pyro, so we're still gonna do like a polish pass on it, so not everything is done, but we still wanted to show you what we have so far. So the idea behind Pyro 1 is that it gets hit by solar flares like repeatedly. We got some concept art from the concept art team, and the way that they visualized these solar flare hits was like glowing marks and streaks all over the planet. Unfortunately, the tech for the glowing part of it is still being worked on, so we had to make do with what we could use. So it's not glowing, but you can still see a lot of the blue coming in. Yeah, as you can see, Pyro 1 already has some volumetric clouds. Not all of the Pyro planets have their volumetric clouds yet. So let's jump to one of the blue spots on the planet. I just tweaked like the sun position a little bit to make it look a bit nicer. And then you can see why it's blue. We added like tons of these crystals to Pyro 1. We've used crystals before on Wala, but I think we were a bit too we played it a bit too safe on Wala. I think we only put like crystals as ground cover assets. But for Pyro 1, we really wanted to push the shapes. So you can find like these really large crystals here. Heisenberg would be really happy here. Okay, then another interesting thing to highlight here, plans over there. So what's interesting about those is we made them like 3 or 4 years ago. They were supposed to be part of like a mission on a space station. The mission was scrapped, unfortunately, and ever since then, this asset set has just been sitting in our like vault. It's a really cool plan set, and I'm happy that we finally found a spot to use them. So this is another spot I want to highlight. It's also important for us that we do add something memorable to each planet. In the case of Pyro 1, it's this spiky rock set that looks really intimidating. We tried to push the scale of the assets for the Pyro system. We felt like by now we got like the basic rocks and the scattering of the basic rocks to like a very good quality. So now we can explore more crazy shapes, I guess. And this is one of the sets that we made. It's not done yet, it still needs a polish pass, but I wanted to show you guys what it feels like when you're in-game walking around here. Now I want to show you my personal favorite biome of Pyro 1. It's this biome here, which has these really cool looking rock formations. They are massive in scale. Like if I jump in-game here, you get a good feeling for the scale of them. Yeah, it's possible to land your spaceship on them. It's probably really fun to race through here. We can imagine that this is going to be like a nice combat space as well, because they do provide nice cover. Let's just jump to a couple different areas on Pyro 1 before we move to Pyro 2. So now we're on Pyro 2. In comparison to Pyro 1, you can immediately see the planet is like way more colorful. There's more variation in the use and values of the colors. We have like browns and like bone white spots, some red, and it's all contrasted by like a blue clear ocean. So Pyro 2 doesn't have volumetric clouds yet, but they will be there at release. So now I jump to one of the biomes of Pyro 2. What I want to highlight here is the improvements that we made to how acids spawn on the side of mountains. That was something that was always quite challenging for us to do, to have some natural transition from the terrain to the geometry, and then also have like the rocks form in a natural way. Now we can make nicer rock formations. It's not quite there yet. There are still improvements planned for it, but I think in comparison to what we had before, this is a big step forward. Also, what you might see is the drawing distance of acids has been greatly improved. So everything you see here in the distance is actual geometry. So if we were to fly all the way over there, you will see that this is like cliff formations. And I think it looks really cool, like the silhouette of the terrain. Yeah, let's fly through the canyons. Yeah, I would do this in a spaceship, but I'm horrible at flying, so I'm just going to use the camera in editor. So now I jumped ahead to a really cool biome on Pyro 2. It's simple, but I think sometimes less is more. In this case, what sets this biome apart from the rest of the planet is that we added these calcified trees, and they spawn in very dense clusters. So you almost get like little forests of them. So it's supposed to look very dry and kind of dead, but still in a pretty way. Okay, if we look at it from this angle, what I really like about this biome is the contrast that you have here on the terrain. It's pale, it's dry, but then in the background you have like the nice clear blue ocean. So this is one of the red areas on Pyro 2. It's kind of like a sandy desert, but we try to add like a lot of different geology acids, different mixes of bushes and grasses. So it's not like a dead desert, but it feels kind of lively. And you find like lots of foliage here. We have like these cliffs in the background, which are pretty dark. And it's another nice contrast of this planet, where you have like the saturated red terrain and the dark bedrock. So jumping to this point here, what I want to highlight is the improvements that we made to our ground textures. So previously, like 2-3 years ago, we had to rely a lot on ground cover acids to add geometry and detail that the ground textures alone couldn't give us. But ever since we got terrain displacement, we get like really nice shapes just from the textures alone. And then if you combine it with ground cover acids, yeah, the result is really successful, how things blend together and the amount of detail that you see on the ground. So now we're on Pyro 3. You saw some of it during last year's keynote demo, but I want to use the opportunity to give you like an in-depth look at some of the biomes. So last year you saw that like yellow is kind of the accent color of Pyro 3. So from this distance you can see through the volumetric clouds like a lot of the yellow coming through. We talked about what's making it look yellow, which is the moss, and I want to like jump down to the planet surface and show you the amount of detail that you will see when going up close to the moss. So we're down at the surface now. I'm just going to jump in game. A lot of time and effort was spent on making the moss look just right. So like the right level of fluffiness and density. So it looks really nice when it like covers these rocks. And then we also have like lots of smaller moss on the ground. We combine it with like yellow grass, and it makes for like a really interesting biome. So it was really important for us to make this biome look really dense. So we pushed the amount of acids that we're using. So it's basically completely covered in foliage. Compared to Hurston, for example, Hurston and Microtech, which are probably our densest planets when it comes to foliage, this is way denser. The good thing is that we don't have any trees here, so all the budget we can use on ground cover, on grass. Now jump to a Pyro coast biome. The improvements we got to the coast biomes is that we can now use OPR override for every single biome. Previously, we could only use one global override per planet, which, as you can imagine, is not enough when you have something like Stanton 4, where you have snowy regions and spruce tree regions, and one object preset just can't cover every coast. We added these coral, like coral geology set to have some of the yellow also along the coast. So you see here, we always have like a little bit of yellow coming through, and eventually it transitions into the nice mossy areas. Previously, when we made coast object presets, we played it a bit safe and only used 1 or 2 acid sets. But due to the fact that we can now push the density along the coast as well, you can find different kinds of coral, seaweed, different pebbles and rocks, and other stuff. Now I jump to one of the volcanic regions on Pyro 3. You might not expect to find vegetation here, but we did add a little bit of vegetation to this region to make it a bit more interesting. What I want to highlight here is the quality bar that we set for ourselves when it comes to improving the look of our vegetation. So this is one of my favorite new vegetation sets that we created. You can see the amount of detail on display. Here we have like nice little flowers and these like knots or whatever, like pods. And it's just like a really cool asset set. So when flying over the volcanic regions, you will find pockets of these scattered all around just to make the area like a little bit more lively. Before we move on, let's jump around to a couple more places. Now we're on Pyro 4, which is my personal favorite of the Pyro system. Yeah, just full disclosure, you can probably tell that the clouds here are not done yet. They do look a bit busted, but yeah, they will look amazing once the planet comes out. So let's focus on the terrain shapes. We created some of these terrain shapes special for Pyro 4 because it's loosely inspired by like Scottish Highlands. So there's not a lot of like verticality, not a lot of trees. So everything is kind of coming from the terrain and from the smaller assets that we scatter on the terrain geometry. So jumping in game, and then you can see the amount of ground cover assets on display, the variation in color, but it's all grounded by like the color of the soil. And it just looks like we have multiple new vegetation sets on display here. So first of all, we have this bush set here, which is called, I think it's called a fire stalk, which, yeah, it's kind of like a modified version of the real world thing. They add like a little bit of color to the area and make things pop. Then we have these ones here. I forgot the name of the asset set. Yeah, they also look quite saturated and interesting. We also try to improve the quality of our tree sets. If you compare like the trees that we have on Hurston to these ones, the geometry count is way higher, the texture resolution is a bit higher, and they just look more polished and nicer, which means that eventually we have to go back to Hurston, to Microtech, and give the trees there like a little makeover. So what was really important for us was to improve the blending between different biomes. So you see here, these are two fairly simple biomes. There's a clear distinction between them, but the transition still feels very natural. So if we go down here, you have like the red grass and it kind of feathers out. Yeah, it feels very organic and natural. Let's jump to the most experimental biome that we've made so far. So for this biome here, the concept art team gave us some really interesting concept art, because this is easily some of the biggest rock formations that we have in the game so far. Actually, let me try to fly a ship so you can see the scale of them. So they're massive in scale. And what was the hardest part about getting these to look right is that they're supposed to look really good from a distance, because you would expect something this big to be visible almost from space. But then the tricky thing is also to make them look good when you're standing up close to them. Let me jump in game so you see how big these rocks actually are. So they are massive in scale. You can probably land your spaceship on them and walk on them, and they make you feel like really small. But I think it's a really good visual that you have these like dark gray rocks against the crimson of the soil and the grass. So here's a little happy accident where we have the volumetric clouds covering the terrain. And because the height map, the difference in height is so large, we actually get like shapes of the terrain poking out of the volumetric clouds. Yeah, you can probably spot some of the tiling issues that we have here, which is something that we still need to look at. But like I said before, this is still work in progress, so it's gonna change a bit. Because I mentioned biome diversity along the coasts before, I just wanted to highlight what one of the coast biomes on Pyro 4 looks like. So this one is kind of this wet sand. We scattered some of the seaweed, some of these lava plates, and some of these pebbles. And then we also get like nice seaweed moving with the waves of the ocean. One interesting thing on Pyro 4 is that we have a massive crater region. On other planets we have individual craters which are a whole height map, or like 3-4 smaller craters on one height map. But this is actually multiple height maps forming one large crater. And you can see it all the way out in space. Like this whole region is one big crater. So it's a mix of like the global displacement texture and then the height maps of the ecosystems spawning on top. Plus the volumetric clouds make it look really epic here. Now we've flown down to the surface of the crater. We wanted this to feel very spooky and grim and kind of dark. So we have these dark fantasy forest looking trees, which look kind of creepy. Then we bring some of the red grass back from the previous biome. If we go down to the surface of the crater, you can see that we added this dark forest looking tree set, some creepy shapes, some moist looking ground cover acids, and this whole area is supposed to make you feel a bit uneasy. It's supposed to be hostile, and it's not safe without your suit on. So far we looked at 4 of the Pyro planets, so let's switch it up and look at one of the moons. This one is Pyro 5C. Similar to Pyro 4, you can see that it has a landmark that you can see from space. In this case, it's not a crater, but it's like a long streak of slick obsidian. So let's fly down to the surface of the streak and have a look what it looks like from up close. Again, we start with like the global height map where there's like a little bit of a bump up, and then it goes down to form the crack, and then we scatter the ecosystem height maps on top to get the look that we want. So if we go down here, you can see we start with like flatland shapes, some smaller craters, and then it transitions into like these quite spiky looking mountain formations. And then down here, they feather into like these longer ridges of bedrock before it becomes smooth down here. And if we jump to this point, which is a really cool spot because like the sun just hits the obsidian in the right way and everything looks like nice and shiny. You can see here that the ground looks quite different from other planets. So instead of soil, it almost looks artificial in a way. Acid-wise, we're using one of our obsidian sets that you can also find on Stanton 4. This one got a bit of an update, a bit of polish, so we improved the shapes, different textures just to make it look extra cool, like the way the sunlight hits these surfaces. To make this area a bit more interesting, we decided to add some of these white light gray shrubs, just so the area doesn't feel too samey, and it's always nice to have like the occasional pocket of vegetation. To set the obsidian biome apart from the rest of the planet, we went with the opposite route for these biomes here. So instead of being shiny and slick, they are more dry, covered in dry sand. The vegetation is dry. We added some of these spiky shapes to add some verticality to the scattering. But yeah, outside the obsidian crack, this is what you will find on the planet most of the time. So this go-to point I picked to show some of the subtle color that we added to Pyro 5C. So the obsidian crack is like kind of just dark gray, black. The desert I just showed is also light gray. So we felt this needed a bit of a color breakup. So we added some of these red hues to the occasional biome. It's very rocky. You also find the red sand on the rocks from the biome accumulation, and it looks really nice how the red creeps up into the crevices of the height maps in the background. We're going to end our showcase today on Pyro 6. Pyro 6 has a very interesting color palette. Like, I really like the yellows and the pale beige tones of the terrain. And then you have another blue ocean. As you can see, the terrain is kind of ridden by craters, and we get these really cool shapes where the ocean fills in those craters. If we jump all the way down to the edge of one of those craters, so now we're at the edge of one of those craters. I'm jumping in game right now just to show you what it feels like walking along here. You can see that we added some dramatic looking coral shapes, and then eventually you walk down here towards one of those craters that's filled with water. We have a couple of floating meshes here on the left. This is still work in progress. So one of us, probably me, has to go in and adjust the settings of the spawning here. And then we're right at the edge. And I really like the color of the water and how it looks against the backdrop of the white chalky terrain. Then over here, I want to introduce you to our human scale ref mesh. His name is Rüdiger, and he's super helpful when we set up object presets, because you can immediately see how the scale of assets feel when you have him in situation. Like, he adds context to the scene. He spawns every time that object preset spawns, and yeah, he helps us find the right values when it comes to the scale of our assets. In general, this biome here is another good example of how our ground textures work together with the assets that we put on top. So the transition is really nice from this ground texture to this one. And then we have like the same rock set on both of them. And it makes for like a nice amount of detail on the ground. Then occasionally we spawn some of these spider-looking ground cover meshes. So this spot here is really nice because you get like the particles, the monochromatic terrain, the assets, and it's all against the backdrop of the skybox of the pyro system, which is red. Then we get like some really cool looking sunbeams coming through the volumetric clouds here. And then if I turn the sun and we make this dark and I jump in game, you can see how drastically the skybox impacts the lighting when you're on the dark side of the planet. And the skybox is just, yeah, it looks really good. So this is the skybox for the entire pyro system. So you will see it on every single pyro planet. It's just that Pyro 6 has like a very thin atmosphere, so you see it well here. I'm happy to have had this opportunity to show you guys the work that we did in the last 2 years. I'm super excited to see you guys explore the Pyro system for the first time, to hear your feedback. There's still work that we have to do, but I hope that you are even more excited than before after seeing what I showed you today.
Jo, to bylo hodně pěkná ukázka. Jsem si vědomý ty planety, jak budou vypadat v reálu, to bude asi trošku pěkný, trošku jiný nářez než tento jednička. Co bude to ještě taky červená bedna? No, podíváme se tam.
Yes, he's a game developer, a founder, a CEO. He made his first game when he was like 15. Anyway, he was sitting in my chair, and he's left. I don't know where he went, but he should not be let back in the building. Yeah, black shirt, jeans. Yeah, just keep him out of the building, because he sat in my chair. All right, thanks. When are we live? Hi, welcome back to CitizenCon 2952. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee, and yeah, welcome to the spaceship, to the only constant. We are joined here by two CIG luminaries, VP of Development, Mr. Brian Chambers, and Chief Development Officer, Mr. Aaron Roberts. Hey, how you doing, guys?
Not too bad.
You were looking at me, and you thought I was going to forget it because I couldn't remember it.
That's right.
During the thing. I'm not good with titles.
I know.
I've had 6 of my own, and my job hasn't changed. I can't check it. So,
I like your dig.
That's what I was going to be for question. Welcome to the spaceship, guys. How you doing?
Absolutely.
Good.
You like it? Like it? We have been talking about this, dreaming about this, and just imagining doing this since 2015. Every time we talked about changing the stuff up and whatnot, like what should we do? And it was always like, we should build a spaceship. We should build a spaceship. So it's like, yeah, someday. But did it. I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. It's way cool.
I'm sorry.
And you're always shooting stuff. You're shooting material constantly. So having a dedicated space that's dialed in that you're cool with, right? It's good.
So we just watched Planetary Pyro. That was the first of our Journey to 4.0 presentations that we're showcasing here today during CitizenCon 2952. It's a brief tour throughout some of the planetary locations you saw from the upcoming Pyro system. You two recently took kind of a whirlwind tour of where'd you guys go?
We basically went over to Asia because we really wanted to go and visit some of the community over there. And so it was actually quite a lot of fun for us, and actually a great experience in terms of learning a lot about the community over there and what they would like and all that kind of stuff. And so it's actually one of the better trips I've been on, and really enjoyed it. Got to meet fantastic people in the events everywhere we went, and so it was really good and really educational for me, actually.
Yeah, same. We first went to Korea, had a nice bar citizen out there, hung out with people. Great food, great fun stories. While we were in Korea, we did a live stream into the China Bar Citizen that was happening at the same time. So we had some technical difficulties streaming while we were there.
That made it more interesting.
Definitely. Yeah. We couldn't hear them and so on, so they were typing out questions, but the banter was great.
Wow.
And then the next week we jumped over to Singapore and hung out with those guys as well.
I was going to say, we haven't had any technical difficulties so far today. I don't know. I was going to say, nothing in here is actually wood.
We're talking about the community actually gave us some cool stuff. So first, this was given to us by the Korean community.
This is Korea, yeah. We'll have you open this.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
This was for you. I don't know the full history behind it, but it is like a replica of an ancient scroll. But the characters are put together as Star Citizen characters,
which is really cool.
Oh yeah,
which is incredibly cool.
That guy's doing the Steve Bender.
So we each got one of those as well, but they specifically wanted us to bring one back for you.
Let me switch to Brian's cam. Let me see if I can move this over here and get it here. Brian, I'm going to hand this to you so I don't get out.
Absolutely.
Hold that and get a little closer to the camera there. There we go. That's very nice.
I got the string in the right. Yeah. Incredibly cool.
All right, now give it back to the spot.
Yeah.
Give it to me.
I'll mess
it
up.
And then from Singapore, really cool.
Then we jumped over to Singapore, and while we were there, this is one we'll also have to.
Everybody at the event signed this awesome.
Let me get this strong here. You grab one side.
I'll grab one side. There we go.
Wrong way.
We did not plan this.
No, we didn't.
Clearly.
Bad, but we got everybody's signature, so we're going to put this up in our new offices in Manchester.
Oh, very cool.
It's very cool. So, yeah. So these things, but anyway.
And then there's other stuff in there. You can pull some about if you want.
That's all for you.
Really cool little coins they made and cards and so on.
And of course, if you're not familiar with what a bar citizen is, you can check out barcitizen.sc. It is a completely community backer-run organization that helps coordinate basically gatherings of star citizens all around the world, including most recently Singapore and China and South Korea. I know there was one in San Diego last night, if I was not mistaken. This says Bar Citizen Singapore, and it's made by the community, and it is a, what is that? Oh, it's a Bar Citizen card.
Yep.
It's metal.
It's proper, yeah.
Nice. Okay, well, I'm going to leave that out. And there's some other challenge coins and stuff. We will go through this on our own time because people are probably like, just get to the next thing.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I know who our viewers are. So before we do move on to the next thing, Brian, Aaron, it is our 10th birthday, our 10th anniversary. 10. It's 10 something. There was an internal debate whether this was the birthday or the anniversary, because the anniversary is sometimes in November, the birthday is in October. Whatever it is, it's 10. You got any favorite memories? So something, I don't know how long we're going to keep you here, so I want to use you when I got you here. On the spot here.
I've been here about 8 years, just about 8 years, right? So a fair amount of the 10. The first one that comes to my mind, there's a lot, but the most memorable one I would say would be 2016 at CitizenCon in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Very first CitizenCon I'd ever been to. Really hadn't interacted face-to-face with the community that much. We know we put a lot of love and effort into what we were going to show. Chris is on stage. He's about to show everything off. I'm looking for a seat. I couldn't find a seat. I went down basically middle floor in the theater and sat on the floor in between all the rows with all the backers. And as I'm sitting there and the demo's going, I already know the demo and the pacing, and then the sandworm blows out of the ground and everybody blows up. And I'm kind of below everybody because at this point they're jumping up. And just to be there and for the people to have the reaction of the thing that you've been working on, right? That's something I'll never forget. It was something, you're at that level, you're feeling the love from them, the excitement that they have of what they're, and you're going, wait, hold on. I'm used to working at companies where we